I think God and Moses both just have enormous respect for each other.
White gladiator has that big trident spear at the neck.
Look, the judges are nodding. Even the Egyptian judges are impressed.
Until recently, you claimed that the Earth revolved around the sun.
Welcome to History Bites. I'm Rick Green. We've covered a lot of really terrible people over the years. Vlad the Impaler, Timur the Lame, Caligula the pervert. Always something terrible. Well, you just don't get more terrible than Ivan the Terrible. Ivan was a strong, clever, and powerful king with a tragic flaw. He was a psychotic monster. As the first Tsar of Russia, he was the last guy you wanted to tick off. Maiming, raping, torturing, murdering. These were signs that Ivan was starting to lose his cool. I guess what I'm saying is he had some problems with anger management. Nowadays, we have lots of qualified professionals who will listen to people's problems, analyze them, and offer advice. And the very best of these professionals host daytime television shows. So let's go back to 1582 and watch some terrible TV.
Welcome, friends. Today's show is about pain and grieving and loss, and hopefully about hope. And recovering from that pain. Joining us in the studio today is a very special guest, Ivan the Terrible. A man who has been around pain for much of his life, mostly other people's pain. But now, after a tragic death of his son, he is dealing with his own loss. People, welcome Russia's ruler and the czar of today's show, Ivan the Terrible. Thank you for joining us on the show, Mr. Terrible.
Well, thank you for having me, and please, call me Ivan.
Ivan, first, I wanted to offer you our deepest condolences on the loss of your son, Ivan Jr. I understand he was the apple of your eye.
Yes, Oprah, a chunk off the old block. We were close. We often did executions together and torturing confessions out of innocent victims, too. Like, I really miss the little guy. Sometimes now I'm torturing a guy and I dig in, pull out some innards, and I want to say, "Hey, son, look at this." And then I remember.
Was Ivan Jr. going to be the next Ivan the Terrible?
That's hard to say. He was only 27, but he was already pretty despicable. I'd like to think he might have been terrible or even horrifying.
Good evening. I'm Greta von Saint. He's been called Ivan the Terrible, but is he all that terrible? He reformed Russia's army, used that army to defeat the Mongols, and brought law and order to Moscow using the tried and true method of random terror. Some say the Tsar is a monster who commits atrocities that he later regrets. Others agree. But they point out that during his moments of remorse and regret, Ivan does good things for his people, like building our nation up by flattening other nations, or by reducing government costs by having the majority of advisors and aristocrats hung in a purge of paranoia.
I know this is difficult, Ivan, but I'd like to talk about the death of your son. Tsarevich Ivan was bludgeoned to death with an iron-tipped staff.
Yes.
Does the pain seem greater knowing that you were the one who bludgeoned him?
Sure. After I hit him 2 or 3 times, I stopped and I was like, whoa! Like, this is my kid.
I hear you. It's like when you lock the door and the last second you look behind you and you see it's closing and you remember that your keys are inside, you know, oops.
Except instead of keys, it was kids.
Little Ivan was dead.
No, he didn't die until a couple days later. I lost a son and broke my favorite staff.
Had you and Junior been arguing?
Sure, typical family stuff, screaming, yelling, murderous rages. Obviously, I overreacted.
And crushed his skull. Do you remember what you were arguing about?
That's the thing, Oprah. Stupid stuff. You know how boys are at that age, flying off the handle over nothing. Dad, I want to take the carriage out tonight. Dad, why can't you consolidate your forces in Poland? Dad, can you stop punching my pregnant wife? Why do kids have to be so temperamental?
He was pretty headstrong.
No, his head wasn't quite strong enough.
Noah?
The Spanish. Sasha, why did the printing press fail to be accepted in Russia?
It is an instrument of Satan.
Correct. Ivana, what do Catholics refer to as the Index?
This.
No, it is the official list of forbidden reading. Vladimir, what elite Turkish military force was just allowed to give up celibacy?
The foot-long foot soldiers?
The Janissaries. Ivana, who runs the Spanish Inquisition?
Dominican monks.
Lawyers.
We're back with our special guest, Ivan the Terrible. Now, do you feel better now, Ivan, after sharing with us your feelings about the murder of your son?
No, not really, Oprah. I haven't found closure.
Maybe this is more than just about your son. Maybe it's about you.
You know, I hadn't thought of it that way, but yes, I mean, he's dead, and
Right.
I'm the one still suffering.
Can you tell us about your childhood?
Sure. I learned a lot of what I know today as a child. I was taught literature, history, religion.
I hear you even taught yourself science and that you used to carry out your own experiments. What did you learn?
Well, all sorts of things. For example, the terminal velocity of a cat or dog. I discovered if you throw animals off the Kremlin walls, a really big dog will accelerate at the exact same rate as a small dog.
Yes.
And I learned about anatomy by examining the big splats they made. It's amazing how red animals are inside, just like people, really. Science is fascinating.
You have netted a pathetic 6,000. Whose head was frozen in the Siberian winter? Whose brains was stolen by the mythical Baba Yaga? Who is the weakest link?
Let's really hear it now for the buffoonery of 6 flying hamsters and 1 ravenous hound. Okay, now, before we bring out our singing act, Destiny's Royal Bastard Child, out there in our audience tonight, back from his 3-year voyage around the world, and recently knighted by Queen Elizabeth, the author of Around the World in 1,080 Days, and How to Achieve Financial Independence by Plundering 26 Tons of Silver from Spanish Settlements. Now, if he has his land legs, he can stand up. Where are you? There you are, Sir Francis Drake. Let's hear it.
Ivan the Terrible. You could also be called Ivan the Tragic.
That's true.
Let's face it, tragedy has followed you around for much of your life. After your father's death, when you were just 3, you and your brother were left in the care of a powerful boyar family, the Shaiskys.
That's right.
Then you were only 13. Your primary caregiver, Andrei Shaisky, perished.
I know. It was awful.
He was torn to pieces in a kennel of the Kremlin's fiercest hunting dogs. Now, how could that have happened?
Well, Oprah, I had ordered my servants to throw him in a kennel with our fiercest hunting dogs. Well, he had disrespected the tsar repeatedly. Never let us eat our fill. He always made me wear his son's clothing, and still was very sad seeing him eaten alive like that. Oprah, dogs may be man's best friend, but not that man's.
In a minute, Ivan the Terrible enjoys a touching reunion. During his 54 years, Ivan the Terrible earned his nickname again and again. Perhaps his worst atrocity was the massacre he laid on the ancient city of Novgorod. The incident began, as many did, with the increasingly paranoid Ivan suspecting the city's inhabitants of treason. Sure, he could have checked to see if there was any truth to his theory, but with the time, the cost, the bureaucracy, Ivan decided to cut through the red tape, and everyone in Novgorod.
What I'm still haunted by, Oprah, is the fact that everybody remembers the 60,000 people I had killed rather than the 17 people I allowed to live.
To help you get in touch with your real feelings, we've invited an old cohort of yours to the show.
Oh, who is it?
today. Please welcome former Oprichniki Malyuta babe Skurata.
Wow! Look at you!
Malyuta, you were probably the most violent, savage, misogynistic member of Tsar Ivan's special task force, the Oprichniki.
Yeah, those were the days. We could do anything to anyone and never have to worry about the law.
Ivan, if you're ever going to put your feelings of grief and guilt behind you, you need to revisit the Novgorod massacre.
All right.
Revisit it emotionally. Now, don't hold anything back. Malyuta?
Okay. Ivan, remember that day? All those women and children, we had them tied up on that bridge and we threw them off to their deaths?
Yeah, I remember.
Remember the chicken coop?
Yeah.
We had all those people stripped down and chased chickens around. Well,
Yeah.
we used them for archery practice.
That's right, I remember hitting a few for 10 points, yep.
And how about the time we tortured the confessions out of all those boyars and abbots at their bogus trials?
That's right, yeah.
And then,
yeah.
and then you had us tie their broken bodies onto these sleds.
The sleds, right.
It was up at the top of that hill, above the Volkhov River.
That's right.
And then we slid them down into that frozen water.
Was that water cold.
It was freezing.
It was freezing, yeah.
And then you sent us down there with the axes and the boat hooks, and we're like whacking them and then like smacking anybody who tried to swim.
They were almost dead anyway.
We
You
were
got 'em.
jumping them up.
Let's take a break.
Have you ever wondered whatever happened to all the Oprichniks? Remember them? Ivan's enforcers? The thugs who put the terrible in Ivan the Terrible? Plundering, raping, and murdering with complete immunity and impunity? Given tracts of land most boyars would be jealous of. My, those men in black had a pretty sweet deal for a while, didn't they? But when Ivan pulled the plug on the Oprichnik project, all these government gangsters were suddenly out of work. Now, I know the average Joe Surf was pretty happy to see them go, but I can't help feel a little sorry for these once proud enforcers of the law, even if the law was just whatever the Oprichniks felt like doing at the time. I mean, what can they do now? Sure, some of them have picked up the odd contract work, killing off other ex-Oprichniks, but there are only so many of these hits to go around.
The political climate in the 1530s, whoa, with all the fighting and murdering between rival boyar families,
Yes.
It was bordering on anarchy.
You felt that what this country needed was a centralization of power.
Right. And to me, Ivan is central.
I see. But this wasn't just a case of running for office. It's not that easy, is it?
No, I mean, to be czar, you've got to really want it, because it's work. So I started killing boyars. I found that the more boyars I had killed, the less influential they became.
Of course, Ivan wasn't the only problem that the citizens of Russia faced. There were also threats from outside the country, barbarians from the east. The Tatar raids produced lots of death and destruction. And unlike Ivan, they weren't doing it just to be mean. They were running a business. After all, if you're not willing to kill a few mums and dads, how are you going to make any money selling their kids?
It's springtime again, and that can only mean three things. The rivers will soon thaw, the flowers will bloom, and the Tatars will pillage southern Russia once again. Here's my report on A Tatar's Tale. This is Batu, a Crimean Tatar. Batu is making his preparations for this year's raids. Batu is hoping for another big haul this year. And what is he hauling?
Children, Russian children. I mean, we'll take the occasional adult or teen, but customers mostly want the young ones. They're easier to break in and lower shipping costs. And besides, who wants to lug around one of those full-grown adults when you can just as easily carry away 4 or 5 of the little tykes? Yeah, every year we round them up and sell off a few of the herd. Yeehaw!
Is that all these children are to you, animals?
No, they're human beings, but you see, these kids are orphans.
What happened to their parents?
We happened to them, the Tatars. Yeah, we gave them the big kiss-off, the old TTFN, Tatar for now.
Okay, what's in the news, Robin?
Well, once again, the Siberian Tartars have been defeated.
Okay, I don't get this. Is it Tatars or Tartars or Mongols? I mean, what's the difference?
I don't know. Go ask them.
yeah, right. Did any of the Tartars get burned at the stake?
I don't know. Why?
Well, I'm just a big fan of steak tartare. And nobody burns up Mongols like our Tsar, you know? Yeah, it's like they were Tsar broiled. Yeah.
In fact, one of the first countries you received delegates from were the Persians, whose Shah presented you with a gift.
Yeah, I made a mistake. I admit that. But, you know, when I took apart the gift and couldn't put it back together again, it's a shame about that, what was it called?
Elephant.
Yeah, elephant, that's it. Boy, are those things complicated inside.
So we help these kids now. We bring them east to live on nice estates with a master to give them food and clothing. Come on, you know, it beats ending up orphans in some village that's just been burned to the ground.
But while these Mongols may be local heroes in Central Asia, here in southern Russia, the Tatars are vilified and hated.
Sure, I hate them. Oh, I would vilify them. If I had a villa. When you come to town again, I'm telling you, we will take you out. Big time, Buster. I've got big sword, I've got big pile of rocks. Kaboom!
But Chu wishes the Russians didn't have to get so emotional over the raids and see them for what they are.
Well, it's business, supply and demand. You know, these Russian kids are hot. Fair hair, blue eyes, all the Asians gotta have one. You know, keeping up with the Mingses.
As a boy, you were just plain Ivan Grozny, meaning Ivan the Thunderous.
That's right. But a lot of people misinterpreted it because I'm also lactose intolerant, so the other kids were like, oh, Ivan thundered again, or who cut the thunder? That's tough to live with, so those kids aren't living anymore.
Historians often divide the life of Ivan the Terrible into 2 distinct halves, the nasty half and then the really nasty and appalling half. The dividing point is the death of his first wife, Anastasia. It's said that he truly loved her and that she had a calming influence on him. As bad as Ivan was in the first 30 years of his life, he got a whole lot meaner without his Tsarina.
Well, fortunately, we have with us today one of our regulars on the show, Gila Phil. Gila Phil, you've listened to the Tsar's sad story. What can he do to put his life back together again?
Well, the first thing you need to do, Mr. Terrible, is to name it to claim it.
Oh, yeah?
Now, you already know some things, such as life rewards action, but your actions are terrible. Ivan, you are terrible. You are a terrible human being. You are cruel, demented, paranoid, lecherous, sadistic, evil man.
Am I? I don't know. I just thought it was the job that made me this way.
Now that is just avoiding the truth. You have to acknowledge your reality before you can change things.
But my son, Gila Phil, I mean, come on, always arguing with me.
Yeah, he argued, but you created your own reaction. You killed him, right?
Right.
You went with your traditional behavior, which is fine if you're battling taters, but it is inappropriate with your son. You bashed his brain in.
I did.
You bashed a lot of brains in, haven't you?
Wow, no more than most.
Ivan, that dog won't hunt. This is where you gotta stand up and face it.
Acknowledgement and accountability. If you don't acknowledge, no one else will.
That's right, because they're dealing with their issues, and they're terrified of telling you.
Yeah, I guess. You're right. I've smashed in a lot of brains. I don't know why.
You wanna know why? You wanna know why? because there are payoffs for you.
Oh.
For example, it's easy. It's what you know.
Yeah.
It sends a clear message to everyone, not just the guy you're bashing. Am I right?
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah. Oh, I'm horrible, aren't I?
That's okay. We all do what works.
Yeah, because we don't think long term. Now, at Ivan, you want to get your life to where it can be. You have to jilt the guilt.
That's right.
Oh,
You got to forget the regret.
okay.
If you want to live, you have got to forgive because you got to forgive yourself.
But what I did was so awful.
Yeah, right, sure, maybe so. But even your son, as he lay dying in your arms, he forgave you.
But after all, he'd just been bludgeoned. It's hard to know what you're saying after you've just been bludgeoned. Oh. How can I forgive myself when I'm such a terrible person?
How can you rape a woman after forcing her to be mauled by a bear?
Been there, done that.
I know you have, and if you did that, you can do this. Who cares if it's right or if it makes sense? You never cared before. Listen, do one more inexplicable, terrible thing and forgive yourself.
I'm gonna do it. You know, I'm gonna do it.
You go.
I forgive me. I forgive me. I forgive me.
Not everyone hated Ivan. Peter the Great and Joseph Stalin modeled themselves after Ivan. They saw him as a strong, decisive leader. And what a strong, decisive leader Stalin turned out to be. Actually, some of Ivan's own citizens recognized the need for his strong, if somewhat misguided, leadership. He nearly doubled the size of his realm, he set up trade relations with the West, and he put in place a permanent autocracy. But there was still that thing with the killing and the raping. Even if others could overlook some of his indiscretions, Ivan himself was ultimately unable to forget his last one. When he died, 2 years later, he hadn't forgiven himself for killing his son. And like his son and his dynasty, Ivan was history, and history bites.
What marketable skills do old Oprichniki have? When you apply for a job at the bank, they don't ask you how adept you are at butchering children or how long you can keep a man alive after boiling him. Actually, they might at my bank. But name an employer who's looking for men prone to sudden fits of violent rage who could be set off at any moment. Besides the post office. Maybe it's just me, but I hate to see anyone out of work. I hope that all the ex-Oprichniks find jobs somewhere, just not in my village.